I just want to say, first off, thank you so much for taking the time to meet with us and for exploring some new ways to get people engaged. This is the first time that Smithers Skill Swap is broadcasting, and we are so happy to be doing it with someone as accomplished and incredible as you. So, first, the novel that you've chosen.
I'm going to talk a little bit. I made a little outline. Are you guys impressed? I've done these kind of talks before, but it's been a little while. But I want to talk a little bit about being a midwife and being an author and my path. I noticed that your thing says Smithers Skill Swap. So I don't know what kind of skills you are swapping, but I thought just in case people are writers or want to be writers or know somebody who's talking about writing a book, I'd tell you a little bit about my path. I went to school, just a liberal arts program in theater, and then dropped out during the war in Vietnam and became a political activist and went on demonstrations and all that kind of stuff. Sit-ins, lay-ins. I was even in jail for a week or so once when I stepped over the line where you weren't supposed to be, and the cops or the FBI or somebody drug us away. So I've had an adventuresome life, but I had my first baby up in Minnesota. We were nowadays, you hear people trying to be more self-reliant or go back to the land and that kind of thing. Mostly younger people, and we were younger then. But so that was back in the 70s that we were already doing that. And I would have liked to have a midwife for my first baby, and I would have liked to have it at home because we're all into nature and all that kind of stuff. And birth is really a natural process. Most of the time it works fine if we don't mess it up. Like making the lady stay in bed or back, and then the doctor has to pull the baby out and that kind of stuff. But we couldn't find a midwife. The only midwife in the state of Minnesota was an older lady in her 80s, and she was in Minneapolis, and we lived in Duluth, or in the out in the woods near Duluth. So we went down to Minneapolis, took the bus, we didn't have a car, about 7 times and took Lamaze classes. And then we're able to find a doctor who would allow the father to be in the delivery room. And as strange as that seems, because it's kind of normal now, right? I mean, there are a few dads who don't want to be, but anyone can have their partner there. And so he was able to be there, and we had a pretty natural birth, not completely natural, but the nurses more or less left us alone because they knew we were trying to do our own thing, and they weren't used to people being on their hands and knees or walking around and that kind of thing. So we were able to, we had to go to a delivery room. There weren't birthing rooms then, but it was a pretty nice delivery. And after that, I started teaching Lamaze classes in Duluth because we had to drive all that way. And I found a venue at a library, I think, where I was able to teach classes. And eventually we left Duluth and moved down with a group of people in Ohio who were starting a commune. And there we continued our anti-war activity and that kind of thing. Eventually, we decided we wanted to go back to the land again. And guess where we came? Spencer, West Virginia, which is probably not that far from you guys. It was a little far for me to drive for one day, but that's where we moved. And I continued at the library teaching classes. And I took some, what you, I guess, would have called online classes about birth and obstetrics, but I don't know if they were online then. Probably not. I don't think we had a computer. So I'm not sure how I did that, but I eventually went to Austin, Texas, where I had learned from some clients, I guess you would call patients that I delivered. There were a group of midwives who would let me apprentice with them. So I've spent a few months down there, and then came back and decided after I did 20 births, I would call myself a midwife. Up to that, they didn't use the word doula at that time. I just called myself a birth assistant or something like that. So that's kind of how I got into all this. And I guess if people aren't familiar with midwives, I should just kind of explain they're not physicians. They could be a nurse, or there's also something called a advanced practice midwife or something, which is not a nurse, but has to take the same board exam that we take. I had to go to nursing school in between there, right? Before I could go to nurse midwifery school. I went up to Minnesota again and studied at the University of Minnesota. And a lot of people will ask, after doing home births, is this weird to go work in a hospital where you're supervised and watched over and that kind of thing? But I didn't really find it that weird. I wasn't used to doing episiotomies, and I was good at getting babies out without cutting. And that's what an episiotomy is, if there's any younger people there in the audience. Some doctors always make a little cut right down here between your rectum and your vagina. Maybe opens things up more, but it also requires a long period of healing. And sometimes people are just never right again. So I got good at using a little oil and just holding the baby slowly, letting it come out slowly, 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 which is hard to do for women who've ever had natural childbirth. The urge to push is incredible, and you just want to go and get it out. So the midwife has to say, push a little, blow a little, blow a little, watch me, watch my face. And finally, the baby just kind of eases out. Much better way than having to cut somebody or to have a cesarean. Although some women are so afraid of childbirth, they just want to sign up for a cesarean because they'll say, I'll be asleep and I won't feel it. But they don't think about afterwards you've had major surgery and you really are not right for 6 weeks. And it's hard to care for a newborn with a big incision in your tummy and you can't laugh and you can't cough because it's really going to hurt. You need to hold yourself when you laugh or cough. So you can't hold a baby and hold yourself. So that's kind of my story about how I became a midwife. Tom and I, Tom became a physician, an OBGYN. He had actually gone to some births and he had been a paramedic, and he would drive me to the births. And at first he thought, oh, he would be a family doctor or something, but he discovered in medical school that he really likes procedures and doing things with his hands. And he became quite a skilled surgeon, as well as a compassionate OB who had his babies at home. So two of them anyway. We had a really nice private practice after we left the university. I forget, when I was in my 65 or something, I was old enough to retire. Started thinking, well, maybe I should write a book. These patients are so interesting that I meet. I think women like to hear about other women and their challenges and that kind of thing. So I started back in 2008, I think, my first book, which was called The Blue Cotton Gown, a midwife's memoir. At that time, there were about two other midwives who actually had written books about their experiences. And one was Peggy Clinton, I think her name is, and she wrote The Baby Catcher. And the other one was, I can't remember her name. She lives up in Minnesota, not Minnesota, Maine. Anyway, I felt like, well, they're writing books. And since I'm not a trained author, I just started writing, and I wrote the stories as if I was telling one of my best friends about these incredible kind of adventures that you would have with women. Many people don't realize that nurse midwives also do GYN, because we're like nurse practitioners. So we're really women's health nurse practitioners with an extra specialty of being able to get a license to deliver babies. So I thought I would read you just a little bit of the Blue Cotton Gown. Gives you the flavor, I guess, of this first book. Take a drink of water. How many people are in the room with you? One now. Oh, because we're making a recording. Okay. I was picturing it like you said, I have to get the room ready. And I was thinking, oh, she's telling people to be quiet.
We're transitioning between we've had a whole day of instructors coming in, so we've had varying crowds. I figure a large portion of yours will be at home. So they've had their chili and now they're ready
Right.
to,
Now they can
yeah,
put their feet up and see what else is going on, huh?
that's right.
This chapter is called Heather. It's Monday morning and I'm late again. Waving to the receptionists, I rush to the waiting room. They turn to greet me in their aqua-checked scrubs, but keep on with their work. I know they keep track of how often I'm tardy. Hi, Donna, I say as I pull open the heavy cherry door to the clinical area. Donna, at checkout, looks over her sleek horn-rimmed glasses and gives me a smile. The phone is tucked under her ear, and she's clacking away at her computer. Around the corner and down the hall is my office. It's a small space, just room enough for a desk, a file cabinet, two bookcases, and a guest chair. The cream walls are lined with my photographs, the Highland forest in full autumn color, a pregnant woman stepping out of the shower, and our barn with the red roof next to our cottage in Canada. On the window ledge are purple African violets rooted in a green pot that Tom threw on the wheel in his studio, and a framed photo of the five of us last Christmas. I toss my briefcase into the corner. In the picture, three mostly grown boys, Micah, Orion, and Zen, clown in front of their slightly crooked spruce tree. That's me in the back, with round pink cheeks, short brown gray hair with streaks of gray, and wide blue eyes. A tall, girlish, middle-aged woman. Tom, stocky, slightly balding, with wire-rimmed glasses and short gray hair, stands with his arms around me. He's laughing too. It would take a miracle to get us all looking normal in front of the camera. 5 minutes after I arrive, I'm standing in the exam room, holding out my hand to a skinny young girl who stares at it as if she's just been offered something she'd rather not touch, a dead fish or a rotten banana. I pull my hand back and try again. I'm Patsy Harmon, a nurse midwife. Uh, the young woman doesn't say anything. She has short, curly red hair, a beautiful girl, but she holds her head down like she doesn't know it. An eyebrow ring mars her perfect face. I pull my hand back and try again. I'm Patsy Harmon. You must be. I glance at the new chart. Heather Muffet? Heather doesn't say hello or anything else. There's also an older woman and a young man in the room, so I start talking to them, turning first to the older lady who's sitting in the guest chair. And you are a family? The grim-faced, gray-haired woman nods once. She inspects me through her glasses, clear plastic frames with rhinestones at the corners. I was hoping she would introduce herself. You must be Heather's mother or aunt, I prompt. It's always better to flatter than insult, though the woman appears to be in her 70s. I'm her grandma. This is not a cordial group, and I'm wondering what kind of conversation they were having before I came in. The air feels like cement, just beginning to harden. And you? I turn to the young man. DJ, he responds sullenly. That's all he says. Heather is sitting hunched over on the small built-in bench in the dressing corner of the exam room. Her arms are tucked into her blue exam gown. TJ swivels back and forth on my stool. The grandmother is perched on the one gray guest chair, so there's nowhere left for me to sit except the exam table, and that isn't going to happen. Before we get started, let's arrange things, I say energetically. Heather, you sit up here on the exam table. TJ, you sit where I was, and I'll take the stool. We all trade places, and when the young man stands, I realize he's over 6 feet tall. His hair reaches past his shoulders, and he's good looking, like a heavy metal star in the 80s, thin and sensuous, with flat gray blue eyes. No one says anything. They just move where I point. So I start once more. It looks like you're going to have a baby, Heather. Were you trying, or did it just happen? I ask it like this, not wanting to assume that every teenage pregnancy is an accident. Heather shrugs and glances at TJ. I try again. So are you excited or still in shock? Excited, I guess, Heather says, not sounding like she is. Well, that's nice then, I respond. The grandmother rolls her pale, watery blue eyes and crosses her ankles, which look purple and sore. Let me go over what you've written in your history, and then I'll ask you more questions. Today, what we need to do is an exam and some lab work. I don't get to finish. I gotta puke, says Heather, standing up with her hand over her mouth and searching wildly around. The grandmother and I stand up too. The older woman opens her bags and comes up with some tissues. I take Heather's slender arm and lead her to the small sink. TJ stays where he is. This doesn't involve him. Heather gags. Do you have time to get to the bathroom? I ask. The patient stands still, her head down, her red hair hanging around her face. I pull the curls back, holding them out of the way. Nothing comes up. I'm okay, I think, Heather whispers. Has she been vomiting a lot, Mrs. It's Gretzko, Mrs. Gretzko. Fair amount, yes. There are 4 times a day, I see. Maybe more. I take the girl's pulse. It's rapid, and when I pinch the pale skin on her forearm, it tints, a sign of dehydration. Are you keeping anything down? Some, says the grandma, but she's bleeding too. Our eyes meet, and when I look over, I see blood dripping down Heather's leg. When did that start? Yesterday. That's why we called round for an appointment. I don't want nothing to happen to this baby. So much for taking a detailed, organized history. You know, Heather, I've changed my mind. I'll read what you wrote on the OB form and ask you questions next visit. Since you're feeling so sick, I'd like to get you a prescription for vomiting and what about the blood? TJ challenges. That ain't good, is it? No, it isn't. It isn't a good sign, but it doesn't always mean something. How much blood is there? Heather looks at her grandmother. About like her monthly, Mrs. Gretzko says. Can you tell me when your last period was? Heather shrugs. We can't be sure. I tell her to write it down, but she don't. Great, I think. Well, why don't you lie back on the exam table and I'll feel your belly to see if I can get an idea. My hands palpate Heather's lower abdomen. There's a bulge halfway between her jeweled belly button ring and the pubic bone, about right for 14 weeks. Are we doing okay with sound? Give me a
I'm
minute.
sorry, what did you say?
I saw you looking and I thought,
No,
no
I'm fine.
problem with
Thank
the
you.
sound.
Please,
We're
please
okay.
continue.
Let's see. So I go to the clinic. No one answers. I tap again, louder. I'm trying to get Dr. Harmon to come out. He's wearing a red checkered shirt with a Beatles tie and black Dockers. His white lab coat is reserved for the hospital. He would wear jeans and a corduroy shirt to the office if I let him. I have a new OB that's spotting. Can you do an ultrasound for viability and dating? I asked. Do you have time? Tom glances at his watch and shakes his head. I have 3 patients to see before I go to the OR. Is she bleeding heavily? Can we do it tomorrow? I shrug. It's not like she's hemorrhaging, but it's not good either, and they're anxious. Get her here in the morning. I'll squeeze her in. A middle-aged woman sitting on the exam table glares at me through her aviator glasses. Tom closes the door, and I head down the hall, trying to decide what to say. I could scan Heather myself, but even if I can find a heartbeat, she'll need a second ultrasound to get an accurate gestational age. And if it is a miscarriage, I want Tom to be there to confirm it. The family won't like having to return, but tomorrow is best. When I re-enter the exam room, I find the small group standing in a knot next to the sink. They quickly sit down. She threw up, said Mrs. Gretzko, as if it's my fault. What about the ultrasound? Demands TJ. I'm sorry, whimpers the girl, looking down. I go to the sink. They've cleaned it, but it still smells like vomit. The nurses will have to spray. We'll have to do the ultrasound tomorrow. I'm sorry. If the bleeding gets worse, come to the ER. I know you're worried, but you have to understand that if a miscarriage is going to happen, nothing can stop it. Just rest, get some ginger ale for hydration, and come in around 10. I'll write you a script for a medicine that might help with the nausea, and you could try some peppermint tea. I have a feeling everything's going to be all right. I'm not sure why I say this. Mrs. Gretzko shifts in her seat and sighs with irritation. TJ crosses his legs in disgust. Heather studies her stubby blue fingernails. So far, she'd uttered all of 4 sentences, and that's all I'm going to get. So that's kind of what my first book sounds like, and it goes on back and forth between what's going on with the Harmon OB team, Tom and I, our family, which is sometimes having troubles like everybody's family, and the patients that I see. After writing the book, I mean, I just kept writing the stories, and I realized these people are coming back, and they're kind of ongoing stories. And I thought, well, maybe this could be a book. And then I read up on how to write a book, which we can skill swap. Um, but one of the things I learned is that you shouldn't have too many characters. So I had to go back through everything I'd written and probably lost about half that I'd half of the stories that I told. But I thought that was good advice that you don't want too many characters. And you all know this from books that you've read, where you feel like you need a thing at the beginning that tells you who all these people are. Because by the time you get to chapter 4, there's already 10 people that you've met. And you don't and sometimes even know which ones will become protagonists after a while. You kind of get who it's going to be. So in a way, I'm the protagonist for that book, but it has lots of stories that I think women like, and a few men have read it too. And I'm always really complimented when a man reads one of my books because they are oriented toward women. And if they write a really good review, I'm even more impressed. I was like, wow, they read my book and they really liked it. And some people have said they didn't know very much about midwives and they didn't really want to read that much about childbirth. But then they found out that there are probably only in each one of my books 5 or 10 actual birth stories where I describe in detail what's going on, what I'd say to the woman, and that kind of thing. So this book was published by Beacon Press, which is in Boston. And it's actually a Unitarian press that has published a lot of really kind of famous books like Luther King's Papers and things like that. Books that at the time a lot of people weren't publishing because they were considered controversial. And the reason I found an agent, and just so people who want to know about, getting your books published and that kind of thing, I'll digress to tell you what you do is you write what's called a query letter to agents that you find. They could be through social media or they could be at some place. There's a website called agentsquery.com, and it lists all the agents that are certified and have licenses to be agents, I guess, and tells a little bit about them and what kind of books they're looking for. Like if they're interested in women's issues, that would be somebody I would send a query letter to. But this is to give you encouragement, not to discourage you. But it took me about 9 months to get an agent. And I had read about how these query letters work, and it said only send one at a time, because what if that person wants you and you already sent out 10 query letters to other people? What are you going to do? Put this person on hold and wait and see if a better one likes you? Or are you just going to tell all the 9 other ones, too bad, too late, I got somebody already? So I was following the rules like the good Girl Scout that I am, and sending out one letter a week or two, maybe 2 a month or something. And I was getting rejections from all of them. Usually, the rejection nowadays, sometimes you don't even hear back, which is like sending a job application in and never knowing whether they even got it or not, because a lot of people don't get back. Maybe they get hundreds of applications. So I just sent out a few at a time. And then after a while, I thought, wait a second, this is 9 months and I have 73 rejections. And they even sent postcards in those days. And what they usually, nobody said, your writing sucks. They would say something like, we're not looking for these kinds of books right now. And some of that was probably true, and other people are just letting you down nice. So after 73, or maybe it was really only 63 rejections, I decided, what the heck? I'm going to send out 10 a month or 10 a week or something. I said, what's the worst that could happen? These agents are all in New York and they're sitting around having coffee one day, and someone says, did you get a query letter from this Patsy Harmon in West Virginia? And the other one says, yes, I did. No, I didn't. Yes. And I thought, what are they going to gossip about you or turn their back on you forever? So I just started sending a bunch out, and it didn't take long before I got and 2 calls from agents in one day, which was really exciting. And I picked the one that was from New York City and seemed to have more experience. But the funny thing is, later I looked back at all those 73 rejections, and her name is Barbara Braun, and she's retired now. But uh, it turns out early on I had sent her a letter, and I'd done nothing different to the second one, which was probably letter 64 or something. And the only thing I had done was change the name of the book. I think I just called it a midwife's memoir or something, a midwife story. But then when I put the blue cotton gown, I guess it attracted her attention. Maybe she didn't even read the first letter. So anyway, that was, and I was the one that found Beacon Press. And part of the reason was is they say they want to take books that will help make the world better. So that was, I thought, well, maybe they'll like my book. And I got accepted right away. So that is a little bit of my story. Let me see, I made my little outline here. This is kind of interesting. You might not think about this, but when Tom and I worked on the faculty at WVU, I taught nursing students and took them, into the OBGYN area so they could get a little experience and at least see a baby born. And then I got to teach medical students in the same way, which was really a great thing. Partly, most of them had not seen a normal birth. They had seen the ones with cesareans or episiotomies. So they learned a little bit about how to ease a baby out. But also they learned about midwifery, and I think that's a really important thing, that these docs mostly were not going to be OBGYNs. They were just doing their rotation in women's health. And then they got exposed to midwives. And so then if they went out into family medicine or internal medicine or even dermatology, I felt like at least they would have a favorable opinion of what nurse midwives did. And now there are a lot of medical schools that incorporate midwives as part of their educational process, and also they see their own patients and deliver the women that prefer a midwife as opposed to a doctor, even though Dr. Harmon doesn't do episiotomies or anything. But the thing is, he's not going to stay all night and rub your back, partly because he has to get up in the morning 7 o'clock and start working in the OR too. So I'll tell you, after I wrote the first memoir, I thought a lot of people asked me how it got to be a best-selling book, and that's why I got a lot of reviews and that kind of thing. And also people were interested in midwifery, and more people were looking for that kind of care. But I thought a lot of people would say, well, I don't get it, because in the blue cotton gown, it talks a little bit about Tom, Dr. Harmon, and my background as anti-war activists and peaceniks and that kind of thing. And people would say, I don't see how you got from being these big hippies to being like this doctor midwife team in the university hospital. And so I thought, oh, I could write a book about that. So then I wrote this one, Arms Wide Open, A Midwife's Journey. And I like that little picture of, can you see the woman? Their arms wide open, standing on a ridge. So that tells about the Spencer Commune and some about our life up in Minnesota and that kind of thing. And I think a lot of people would like it, especially if you're from West Virginia. Let me see if there's anything I could read to you that's not going to be that different, probably. It really puts together about 7 years of my life. And it's divided into seasons, which it turns out the blue cotton gown also was like spring, summer, winter, fall, spring again. So then I wrote Arms Wide Open, and I used that same, I don't know what you call it in writing terms, but that convention, I guess. Then after a couple of years, I thought, sort of milking my own life here for things to write about. And this would have been the beginning of the great, they call it now the Great Recession, back, when everything looked like our economy was falling apart and that kind of thing. And people were losing their jobs and sometimes losing their houses and that and all that. And I thought maybe I should write about the Great Depression, because people can relate to that now, especially in these years. And those were particularly bad times. We floated in and out of that for, the last maybe 10, 15 years, but it was especially bad back then. So I thought, okay, I'm going to write about the Great Depression. And I said it in 1929, which was the year the stock market crashed. And that's the day the book starts. Since there's not an audience, I can only ask you, do you want to hear some more? And yes, okay, good. Stillbirth. This is how the book starts. How long do you think my baby's been dead? Catherine turns toward me. I can tell she's still crying. 5 days, maybe less, I answer my patient. I heard the heartbeat when I checked you last Friday, and you said the baby moved during church. Shut your eyes now, try. You need to rest. I place my new leather-bound journal on the maple table, lean my head back, and gaze across the dark room. Fire crackles in the blue-tiled fireplace, flickers on the armoire, the canopy of the birth bed, and the wallpapered walls. A watery image in a dressing table mirror catches my eye. It's me, a small woman with long auburn hair, a straight nose, and a round chin. Pretty enough, but not beautiful. People, when they read this, ask me, "Is that you, Patsy?" And I purposely made her a small woman. My hair was auburn at one point, but I am I'm 5'9" or 5'8", so I'm not a small woman. But the thing is, after I thought about it, I thought every word that comes out of her mouth would have been stuff that I would say. So I guess it kind of is me, even though I made her try to look different. I'm sitting at the bedside of Mrs. Catherine McIntosh, the wife of William, owner of McIntosh Consolidated Mines. Yesterday was Black Tuesday. That's what they're calling it. Wall Street fell, and then I had to tell the McIntoshes that their unborn baby was dead. The crash, a faraway earthquake, rumbled even here in Appalachia, and I'm thankful I don't keep my money in the bank. Not that I have any. As I desperately searched for signs of life in Catherine's womb, moving my wooden fetal scope over her round belly, up and down and then across, a line of customers fought to get their money out of the First Mountain Federal in Liberty. The queue of men snaked down Chestnut and around the corner to Fayette, though any fool who strode along Main and saw the closed shops should have known what was coming. When the coal mines begin to shut down in Union County, everything else does. Hold me, Patience, I'm so cold. Catherine reaches for my hand and pulls me toward the bed. Mary Proudfoot, the McIntosh's cook, and her grown daughter Bitsy are asleep in their room by the kitchen, curled around each other like kittens. William McIntosh snores in his bedroom down the hall. The room is not chilly. It's Catherine's heart that is cold, knotted up like a chunk of ice thrown up on the banks of the Hope River. It doesn't seem proper for a midwife to sleep with her patient, but if I rest a few hours, what harm can it do? I'll need my strength to get us all through this. I breathe out a long sigh, carefully place my wire-rimmed glasses with the journal, kick off my slippers, move over to the bed, and fold myself around Catherine, giving her comfort where there is no comfort. Remember Pittsburgh, when in the winter I used to sleep with Mrs. Kelly and Nora. I'd like to tell this mother about my own stillborn baby, the one I carried when I was 16, the very same baby whose father died before he was born, but I can't add to her burdens. I pull the cover over Catherine's shoulder and put my arms around her as she sobs in her sleep. The loss of this child is all the sadder because her first son, not yet 2, a little blond boy, just learning to talk, died of pneumonia last winter. Her contractions are mild and come every 10 minutes. Dream. At 6:30 a.m., as light crawls under the heavy drapes illuminating the rose carvings on the tall maple armoire and the pattern on the red flowered carpet, Catherine sits straight up in bed, her hand on her belly. I felt it, she says. I rub sleep from my swollen eyes, thinking she dreams. I'd listen for the sound of the infant's heartbeat with my wooden-horned fetoscope for a whole hour yesterday as the room got quieter and Catherine's eyes rounder. There was nothing to hear but the rambling of the woman's bowels. No tick, tick, tick of a baby's heartbeat. No baby kicks either. I even called for Dr. Bloom, tall, thin, hair thinning on top, and he listened for another 30 minutes. Still nothing. Catherine screamed when I first told her the baby was dead, and when the physician nodded agreement, patted her hand, and took her husband out of the room. She screamed again. The sound of that wail goes right to your heart. I'd only heard it once before at Manny McCall's delivery in Pittsburgh when Mrs. Kelly, the midwife, told her the twins had expired. But you never forget. Even if you were outside on a warm summer evening and heard it through an open window, you would know what I mean. Downstairs on William McIntosh's new RCA consult, we could hear the faint voice of a newscaster describing what was happening in the stock market. Then, before I had time to discuss the case with Dr. Bloom, he was called away to attend a sick child and left the stillbirth to me. I was the midwife, and she'd signed up to deliver at home instead of in a small private hospital. He must have thought I'd know what to do. Catherine is still kneading her white belly like bread dough, pushing it back and forth. I felt it, she said. I felt something. I stretch and sit up. It was probably just a gas bubble or maybe a labor pain. Do you need to go to the bathroom? In addition to electric lights, the McIntoshes have an indoor latrine and running water. In town, this is not unusual, but in most of rural West Virginia, both electricity and plumbing are still rare. I felt it. I know I did. Catherine, I straightened my rumpled flowered shift, embarrassed at the impropriety of sleeping with a patient, and put on my glasses. Let's go to the toilet. I'll listen for a heartbeat again after you've relieved yourself, but don't get your hopes up. Your baby's spirit has gone back to heaven. I talk like this as if I'm a believer, but in truth, I haven't been to church except for funerals and weddings since my husband Reuben died on Blair Mountain, along with 150 other Union men. This was back in the fall of 21, a bad time. I think I felt it. Something woke me. Catherine's no longer sure. In the McIntosh's water closet, I study the apparatus. The high porcelain potty has a round polished oak seat, more like a piece of furniture than a commode. When Catherine finishes, she pulls the brass chain and water rushes in to rinse out the contents. I wonder if people in the audience have seen these old-fashioned toilets. I know I have in a museum or something somewhere, because the water is actually above the toilet, way above the toilet, not like our commodes nowadays. Stepping out of the small green mosaic tiled room, my patient turns. I have to go some more. She's a tall woman, taller than I, with the face of a film star and rumpled short blonde hair like Jean Harlow. The pregnant woman lifts her white embroidered nightdress and plunks down on the seat again. I let out my air, glance at the rumpled covers, and decide to straighten the bed. While I'm fluffing the feather pillows, I hear a low grunt. No, you don't, Catherine. I know that sound well. I jump over the needlepoint footstool, trip on the edge of the red flowered carpet, and skid across the shiny wood floors in my sock feet. It's the grunt of imminent birth. Nothing's ready. Catherine showed no signs that she was in hard labor or any labor at all. Maybe that's how it is with stillbirths. The woman's body desperately wants to get rid of the baby. I wouldn't know. In the births I've attended before, the infants were alive, at least for a while. When I say that, the death rate for women and babies was quite high in the 30s and the 20s. So it would not have been uncommon that a baby might not be born alive or would die right after. Especially out in the country, the roads were still unpaved, maybe graveled at best. And like if you were in a city or a town, you would have access to hospitals and surgeons and that kind of thing. But out in the country, it would maybe take you hours to get to a hospital. I have packets of needles with sutures in case Catherine tears. I have clean cloth pads. I have sterilized scissors. I have oil to help the vagina stretch. But everything's wrapped in my satchel downstairs where I left it by the door. Bitsy, I call, Bitsy, Mary, help. A door downstairs flies open and bare feet pound on the stairs. Somebody bring Mrs. Kelly's bag. The feet pound back down again. I don't know why I said Mrs. Kelly's bag. Mrs. Kelly, my mentor, my unofficial guardian, my friend, died a year after we moved to West Virginia, and I'm alone again. Mr. McIntosh. Ordinarily, I don't have fathers in the room when women give birth. They can't take the intensity. But I need someone fast. The husband's arrived in his white and blue striped pajamas, rubbing his eyes. He's a big man with short sandy hair and a mustache, a handsome guy with the build of an ex-athlete gone to seed. Mary and Bitsy, still in their night clothes, their eyes white and wide in their brown faces, their dark braids flying, crowd in behind him. William, bring clean sheets, towels, anything. I'm dragging Catherine back to bed when her water bag breaks. She understands now that it's not a bowel movement, but a dead baby that's coming. Catherine growls again and squats on the floor. She's unconcerned about the expensive red carpet, aware only of the terrible pressure, the need to push. I put my hands under her bottom, and am startled to feel a head right there, as round and hard and warm as a living baby's head. I'd read in Mrs. Kelly's worn text, The Principles and Practice of of Obstetrics by Joseph DeLee, that stillborn babies, when held in the womb for more than a week, start to decompose, and I had expected to feel something starting to get squishy. No, you don't, Catherine, up on the bed. Bitsy lowers her down and gets clean towels under her. There's no time to pull on the special order rubber gloves I just purchased from Stinger's Pharmacy, so I place my bare hands like a crown around the head. Catherine grips the sheets, wide-eyed and frightened, staring up at the chandelier. I motion Bitsy to lift the woman's head. Look in my eyes, Catherine, look at me. With the next pain, I want you to pant. Do you remember this part from how I said I delivered babies? The head is right here. You don't have to push. Your womb will do the pushing. If you pop the head out, you'll tear. Out of the corner of my eye, I catch sight of the father as he swoons and slides down the flowered wall. But we let him lie there. Okay, Mary, be ready with the towel to wrap the baby. I'm not worried about keeping a dead infant warm. I'm thinking that the child may be deformed or the skin already peeling. The head with dark hair turns and emerges between my hands, first the brow, then the chubby cheeks, then the chin. Pant, Catherine, pant. There's a cord around the neck, but it's loose. Once, twice, I loop it over. Now the shoulders, just a gentle push. I give the wet, lifeless infant to Mary, the cook, whose hands shake so hard I fear she might drop it. Hold steady now, hold tight. The limp baby boy, gray-blue as Lake Michigan, is placed in the towel, and I drape the tail end over the body. At a glance, he looks perfect, and the cord wasn't too tight. I wondered why he died. Maybe a heart defect. I heard that could happen. Or a missing kidney. The cook, a 6 foot tall, big-boned colored woman, hasn't moved. Her arms outstretched like the limbs of a maple still hold the corpse. What do you do with the baby? Take it to the kitchen? Put it into the new white cradle? I had never thought of this. I just noticed that I said big bosomed colored woman. And this was a dilemma for me in writing books like historical fiction. There are certain words that we don't use anymore. And have really almost become offensive to some people. But I felt like there's even one place where no, I don't think it's in this book, in one of the other books, where a man says something about, he uses the N word, and he says, I don't want any N-word doctor working on my wife, because the only doctor available was a black man. His wife died because he wouldn't let him, because he was so racist. But that was the reality in those days, you know. So then I had to kind of not be too squeamish and use some words that made me uncomfortable, even swear words and stuff like that. You know, working men, my husband was a carpenter before he was surgeon and a doctor, and this was back in the hippie days, and he would tell me how every other word out of the guy's mouth would start with an F, that and F this and F you, and so I only probably said that twice, but sometimes I did have to use kind of language that I felt people aren't going to like this, but that's how people talked. While I wait for signs that the afterbirth is separating, I motion Mary over and lift up the corner of the towel again. The dead baby's eyes are glazed and wide open. Then the ribs move, just a tremble, like an old lady's hands. Holy cow. If I hadn't been staring, I wouldn't have even seen it. A sucking in action. Give me that baby. I grab the wet infant, almost dropping him on the bed. Then, without hesitation, I kneel as though I'm praying, put my mouth to his tiny blue lips, and breathe for him 3 times, the way I saw Mrs. Kelly do once. 3 tiny puffs. As the air fills his lungs, Catherine's son coughs weakly and lets out a mew. He turns from gray blue to pink, starting in his face and trunk, and then out to his hands. Catherine rolls slowly on her side. My baby, my baby, my baby. She's sitting up now, reaching out, crying over and over, my baby, my baby. And the baby is crying for his mother, too. I lay him on her lap so she can see his little face. Praise Jesus, sings Mary, her hands clutched to her chest, holding her joyous heart in. Bitsy, who's sharp as a briar and half the size of her towering mother, has the good sense to cover the crying newborn with another dry towel and rub him all over. I finish cutting the cord and deliver the afterbirth. All the time it's staring at the Madonna and child. William McIntosh, who has missed the whole event, wakes up from his faint and crawls across the carpet toward the bed. Mother of God, it's alive! He turns to Bitsy, unwilling, I imagine, to trust the blunt-headed midwife who had told him his baby would be dead. I recall Catherine's proclamation that she had felt the baby kick a few minutes before. I'm new at this, but it wasn't just me. Dr. Bloom, the family physician, confirmed the absence of a heartbeat. Now I wonder, had the newborn child been lying in Catherine's room with his limbs curled up in a way that we couldn't hear his heart with my wooden fetoscope, or even the physician's new metal one? Even in the best of positions, it's hard to hear that faint sound. Had a cord been pinched, causing the fetal heart to slow so that I confused it with the mother's pulse? I feel like a fool and maybe a dangerous one. What makes me think I can be a midwife with only a few years apprenticeship and no Mrs. Kelly to guide me? On the other hand, the baby's alive. I show Bitsy how to gently massage Catherine's womb every 10 minutes so that it stays rock hard. She's a quick study and repeats everything I say. Then I show her how to inspect the placenta for any missing pieces and how to weigh the baby in the old-fashioned hanging scale that Mrs. Kelly left me. Finally, I sit back in one of the satin chairs and observe the new family. The mother is already breastfeeding. When I pull up the fringe window shade, the sunlight bursts into the room. This child will be stronger than any of us. So that's kind of what the books are like. Then Bitsy becomes her assistant. She loses her job with the Macintoshes, and their mother does too. And her mother can't find another servant job because all the other rich people are now poor because they lost their fortune in their coal mines and factories or whatever they had. So the next book, Nurse Becky Myers helps patients, is her name, get a certification that she's licensed to in West Virginia. And you didn't have to go to school then or anything. You just had to someone say that you're of good character and that you know what you're doing. And Nurse Becky was a home health nurse. So she thought it would be good if patients got her actual license, and then she can actually be paid. At the time when she started, her payment would be something like a load of firewood or a few bags of coal, or occasionally some useful thing like a pump that she could use on her farm to get water. So that book was in the middle of the Great Depression. And then I think this is another 5 years on. And the final one that I've got done, and I'm working on a third one, the fifth one, is the Midwife Song, which was set during the Civil War. Can't say it, can you? Set during the Civil War days, and goes back and forth between the current day with Patience and Bitsy discovering a group of old journals that are from a teenage girl who was a slave. And she was so light-skinned that she was raised by a Quaker family. Even though they owned other slaves, they kept her as a daughter and taught her how to read and all that kind of stuff. The neat thing about writing historical fiction, I would have thought before I started doing it that you had to be some kind of expert historian, but now it's all online. So you can go Google something like, when did they start having fetoscopes? Because nowadays it's mostly electronic monitoring for the baby's heart rate. We still have metal fetoscopes that if a woman really didn't want anything electronic like ultrasounds or electronic fetal monitoring, it's a little thing that goes over your head and has a little thing that comes out and makes you look like a unicorn, and you put it down and it goes into your ears. And it really is just like like you can barely hear it. So somewhere in there, I was having a bad year. A lot of stress was going on, maybe with my kids, different things. And I kept thinking of running away. It's not like I wanted to commit suicide or anything that bad. It was just I didn't want to deal with my problems, and I couldn't think of how to get away besides just running away. And so I wrote a story. I put it on. By this time, we have Facebook, and I put on there. I said something like, "Have you ever been so stressed out that you just wanted to run away?" And within like an hour, I had 63 replies. I keep using the word 63, but a bunch of replies saying yes, yes, yes. And then one person said, "And I did." And I thought, well, that's interesting. So I decided to write a story, a contemporary. The other novels are historical fiction. And I decided to write one about a woman who, you want to hear a little bit of the story? You do? That's our time. Oh, we got time. Next to the dead man, this is the prologue. Next to the dead man lying on the beach, mostly covered with snow, is a dead swan, its neck twisted at a strange angle. A woman stands staring, not sure who she feels sadder for, the man or the bird. Then she turns for the cottage, hoping the waves of Lake Erie will take them away. It's not that she's an unfeeling woman. She's just felt too much. Winter. Chapter 1. Flying. The sun, a red eye, is just going down as we speed across frozen waters of Lake Erie. Even with the ski mask on, my face is freezing and my eyes run with tears, but whether from the cold or my damaged heart, I don't know. I think about my daughter. I think about my patient Robin, who died just days ago. I think about my friend Karen, whose unexplained suicide has left me crippled. I think about the sudden turn my life has taken. "This is safe, right?" I yell up to my driver as we bump over rough ice. The cabbie said some men on snowmobiles went drowned around Middle Island last week. Lenny stops, turns on the Ski-Doo headlights, and puts on a pair of clear goggles. Those guys were yahoos, didn't watch where they were going. You can tell by the surface where the ice is weak. "You have someone meeting you on Seagull Island?" "I can't stay around." "Yes," I lie. "Just leave me on the west side of Gull Point. You know where that is? There's supposed to be a little cove there. They'll pick me up on the road." In truth, there are no friends. It's just me and the ice and the snow and the now darkening sky. Big cumulus clouds sweep past the stars, and for a moment I stretch out my arms just to feel like I'm flying. "Hold on now," Lenny suddenly warns before he makes a sharp turn around a pyramid of ice that juts up from the surface. "Yikes," is all I can say. Finally, the half moon rises and illuminates the sky. The words to an old song Karen used to sing come to me. "I see the bad moon rising. I see trouble on the way." But trouble has already found me. We hit a tilted sheet of silver at an angle and take air as we crash. "Whoa," yells my driver. And when I grab him around the waist, I find that Lenny's broad back in his black snowmobile suit shelters me from the wind. He might be an outlaw, but he's a warm outlaw. "Is that the island?" I shout to my escort as a low, dark shape rises on the horizon. "Yeah." "How much further?" "Another 20 minutes. A half mile from shore, Lenny cuts the lights and moves in slowly. This is Gull Point, he says in a whisper, because of ice slabs that have blown in. I can't get any closer, so I'll have to walk, but tread lightly. Once you're on the beach, if you go ahead that path through the woods, you'll come to the road. He indicates an open place in the shadows, a short distance away. I hate to leave you like this, but I can't afford to get caught by customs or seen by any of the locals. He helps me off, and I'm embarrassed to say I have to hold on to him until my legs get their strength. Thank you, Lenny. Don't want you to get any trouble. I really appreciate your help, and I'll be fine. I really will. I'll be fine. It's colder here than in Ohio, and I shiver as Lenny gets back on the snowmobile. Call me if you need anything, he says. Then I'm alone. But I'm not fine. Not fine at all. So she escapes to this island that she learns about, I think just on a map or something. It's just inside Canada. Like if you were to draw a dotted line across Canada, half of Lake Erie would be to the north, and the other half is to the south. And actually, we do have a cottage on an island in Lake Erie, but it's not called Pelee Island. I had to change the name because we rent it out in the summer, but we go there a lot in the summer too, and we know the locals. And if I said anything negative, like people gossiping in the grocery store or something, I think people would know it, and then they might not like me. So I had to change the name, but I figured they all knew. Pelee Island, the one we go to, has wineries and they grow grapes because you wouldn't think anything in Canada would have the same latitude, well, just the latitude as places in Italy and Spain where they grow grapes, but it's actually in the winery, they have a map that shows the latitude and how it compares with European wines. And of course, they make wine in Michigan and Northern Ohio. But how we got to go to that island is Tom went to medical school at Case or at Ohio State and then did his residency at Case. And that's in Cleveland. And we started going up there camping. And then one day we thought, this house is for sale. I guess we thought he was a doctor now. We could afford it. But then we forgot that we had to come to West Virginia after his residency and we would have to buy a house. So we'd already used all our savings. But because he was a doctor, they gave him lots of, the bank was very liberal. So I'm trying to think what else I have to share with you. I do have 3 kids' books.
Did you say you have three kids' books?
Uh-huh.
Wow. I just have to say really quickly, I am so impressed with your tone and your voice when you're writing. I mean, you say that you have no professional experience in writing a book, but I guess naturally amazing at it because the way that your words flow, they just pull you in. And I really appreciate your voice, the way that it sounds. It's great.
Now, one of my first probably Amazon reviews, it wasn't a professional review. It was just somebody like you who really liked the books. And they just said, um, as the review part, she said, it's an easy read, but I loved it. I thought, wait a second, easy read? That doesn't sound very literate or important or anything. Then I thought, what do I like? I don't like books that, I mean, not putting them down if everybody else likes them, but like with long, detailed description of where they live. I mean, I just like it like she looked out the window and saw the trees and the forest all around, or something like that. And also, one of the things that gave me courage to start writing was I just started writing as if I was writing to my friend who was also a nurse, and she was an OB nurse, and she would laugh at the same things I laugh at and cry the same things. And when I talk to people about writing, they say, "Oh, I always wanted to write a book, but I just don't know how to get started." And I just say, find a story and tell it to your friend, and then go back and make it pretty, you know. And that's kind of what I do. Like the book I'm writing now, I I don't want to get all political, but with things that are going on in the United States right now, I've been more mesmerized by the news than writing. And this
Yeah.
happened a few years ago too, when this certain person was in power before. I lost track of my writing. Um, that anyway, what made me write the kids' books was I have grandkids, And I thought it'd be kind of fun to write a book for my grandkids. And so it's also features West Virginia people and Lost on Hope Island, the amazing tale of the little goat midwives. And the storyline, and I was only planning to write one book, but again, I fell in love with my characters and I couldn't let them go. But the storyline is that these two children, a boy and a girl, were like 12 and 8. So I tell people the book is written at a reading level of they're really a good reader, probably 7 to, into the teenage years. A lot of adults really like the books too, just because they like my voice, I guess. But so the story is that their mother, who is a midwife from West Virginia, wouldn't you know, and their grandma, who was a home birth midwife like I was at the start, they the mother and the father is a nature photographer, and he's doing a shoot on the coast of Mexico. And so they all get to go on a vacation for this. And while they're there, they rent a sailboat, and a bad, bad, bad storm comes up, and the children are separated from the boat. They don't know what happened to their parents. They're hoping they're still alive, but they find each other in the Pacific Ocean. I mean, it's close. It's not like they floated clear across. They find each other, hold on to each other. And at the beginning of the story, okay, since you begged me,
Yes, yes,
I
please.
will have to. And I illustrated this one,
It's
and which
good.
is kind of fun for me. I don't know if you can see the picture. Where is it? Oh, there she is.
Oh, yes.
Um, so it's written as if in the words of the 12-year-old girl who later on the time passes and she's now 14 and her brother is 8 or something like that. The numbers match up, don't worry. I had to write it down in paper to make sure I got it right, but alone. In the dream, it is dark. I hear screaming, then the roar of the wind and cold waves crashing over me. I'm in a sailboat and someone is holding me tight, someone familiar. Maybe my mom, maybe my dad. No, it must be my mom, because in the dream I can see my father desperately dumping water over the boat's side. The boom almost hits him, but he ducks down. There's another smaller person in my mother's arms, but I can't see who it is because the spray is so heavy. Then there's a jolt so hard it makes my teeth smash and the boat begins to fall apart. In the dream, which feels like the worst kind of nightmare, I hear myself scream. Then the water, dark, dark, and cold, sucks me down. Mom, Dad! Salty liquid fills my mouth. I bob up again and I see something floating in the moonlight. It's my brother. We grab each other and hold on, but the waves pull us down again. When my head is out, I call for help. In the dream, the dark water pulls my parents away from me, my parents who have always cared for me and made me feel safe. When I wake, I can tell it's morning. I'm lying in the sand. Seagulls cry, and a shadow moves across my face. Trillium, a voice says. Trillium, are you dead? With great effort, I open my eyes and I see a small boy on the beach. He's looking down, touching my arm with one running shoe. No, it irritates me to be touched like that, and I inch away. No, I'm not dead. The boy with brown skin and a dimple in his chin, very short, dark, curly hair, and a dirty, tear-streaked face is my brother. He's only 8, and sometimes, like now, he gets on my nerves. Then I feel bad about it because the little kid's scared. I'm scared too, but I'm older and I should be kind. What bothers me most is my head feels so fuzzy, and I still can't remember what actually happened. Here, sit down next to me in the sand, Jacob. I'm sorry. Do you know where Mom and Dad are? I still can't find them, he sniffles. I've been walking up and down the beach, but I don't know where they are. I can't find the boat either, and I'm hungry. Our jackets are over there. I turn and see 2 puffy orange vests lying in the sand, but have no memory of taking mine off. I want to go home, Jacob whimpers. I'm hungry. I want to go home too, I tell him, but the truth is I have no idea where home is. I've heard that can happen, where after a blow to the head, a person forgets everything. Jacob, I know this sounds weird, but do you remember where we used to live? America? But where in America? Liberty, West Virginia? But Dad took us camping on the beach. Where? On the beach in Mexico, don't you remember? Mexico? Why Mexico? But I get up trying to figure it out. My forehead hurts terribly, and I have better things to do. I stand, I lean on Jacob. He's little but seems not to mind. Then we struggle up the steep gray cliff that shelters the beach. We have to find help. All over the strange rocky land we hike, but we find no roads or stores or houses anywhere. There are no sounds of machinery, radios, or human voices. Black vultures with wings as wide as my arm circle above. Hello, help! We call until our throats hurt and our voices crack, but there's no answer, and a queer emptiness overcomes me. All we can see are mountains of gray and black rock, pitted with holes, small pointed cactus, short twisted pine trees, and bushes with thorns. There are cracks in the rocks, so wide and deep a person could fall into them, and all around in every direction is water, gray and forbidding. I'm tired, whines Jacob. I don't want to explore anymore. We aren't exploring, we're looking for help. Do you see that? On the horizon, a blue-gray cloud bank is forming, and lightning slashes the sky like a spear. Another storm's coming. I pull him along, squeezing his little hand too tight. Jacob is small for his age and has skinny little legs, and I know he's exhausted, but we have to find shelter before the rains come. The kid plunks down on a rock and starts crying. I'm starving, he sobs. I want mama. I care about my little brother. I do, but my head is pounding and I feel really mean. I jerk him up. He could at least try to act brave. I have to. Just a little bit more of the next chapter.
Great.
Voice. What was that? I whip my head around. Even sad little Jacob stands listening. Sounds like people, he says, and we hurry in that direction. Meow. The sound gets louder. Meow. These are human. They speak a very different language. We look at each other, eyes wide, excited. Maybe they're adults who can give us food, and maybe someone will have a cell phone. If they do, we can call our grandparents. I notice that I'm remembering more now. I can picture Grandpa Jean, Grandpa Pete, and Grandma Jean. Grandma has curly red hair like mine, only short, and it bounces when she walks. She's a midwife who delivers babies in homes in West Virginia and lives on a farm on top of a mountain. Grandpa's hair is almost white, even though he and my brother aren't related by birth. He has a dimple in his chin like Jacob, and that makes them both happy. Grandpa Pete is retired, but on his farm he has a cow, lots of chickens, and a garden. Before he retired, he taught science at the high school, so he knows all about plants and animals. He's also a musician and plays the guitar. Bleh, bleh. Jacob and I squeeze through another narrow opening between two big boulders, and there on a ledge sits a massive billy goat. His long white beard hangs in strands down his chest, and out of his head grow two enormous curved horns. And there he is. He says, looking down at us with flaming yellow eyes. Yeah. It's a nasal sound like a sheep would make if it had a bad cold. Below the billy in a small clearing are a herd of other goats, maybe 30, maybe more. Some are big, and some are little. Some have curved horns, and some have only buds. But the billy goat is the biggest and smells the strongest too, like a wet goat, only worse. He stands, bleats another low warning out of his chest, and Jacob hides behind me. I don't know if we should run or act friendly, but I don't think we can get away fast enough, so I try talking softly, like I would to a vicious dog. Nice goat, nice Billy. Sorry to come into your home uninvited, but we're lost and need help. Are there any people around here? The billy goat makes a low sound again, lowers his head and shakes it. His eyes bore into mine, and the other goats echo him in their higher voices. Trying a different approach, I push Jacob in front of me. Is there anything to eat? My poor little brother is hungry. How could the animals resist this little guy's tear-streaked, sad face? One of the small goats prances up and butts Jacob in the chest. Then he jumps on him with his front hooves like a puppy. Yeah, he says. It's hard to tell if he's curious or trying to act friendly. Yeah, Jacob says, laughing, and all the goats' yellow eyes widen. Yeah, they answer. because it sounds like Jacob is speaking their language. Billy, for in my mind, that's what I now call the big white fierce goat with a long white beard, raises his enormous head with curved horns and glares at his herd. So that's a little bit. And remember the amazing tale of the little goat midwives. So it turns out this goat, this island has the only mammals on the island. There's a few snakes and a few geckos or lizards or something, but the only mammals are the goats. And I can't tell you how they got there or why. And I can't tell you where they're going to find to live, but I could give you a hint. There's a there's a stone cottage on the island. Apparently someone had lived there and left in a hurry. So it's got all kinds of dishes and books and beds and everything they kind of need, as luck would have it. But except for food, that's the problem. And it turns out that the goats eventually allow the kids to milk them. And they know how to milk because of their grandpa's farm, remember, where he
Oh,
said he
yeah.
did it. So they figure it out. And they actually learn to make cheese and eventually find some fruit that they didn't know about. So that's how the book starts.
That's amazing. I love the idea. I hope to read it. I have a little girl myself, and she would
Oh,
love
yeah?
it. She would love it. Yeah.
How?
She's about to be 8, and she was born about 3 months early.
Wow.
So, as you were telling these stories, just of course, as you stated, women love hearing these stories, but it resonated so, deeply with me. I was incredibly grateful for the nurses and the women that supported me while I was in the hospital. My water broke very early, and I was, on hospital bed rest for about 5 weeks. And they would come in and they'd listen to her heart and, try to take my vitals. And it was very similar to the story that you've told today. And I have to say thank you for writing these stories and for doing the work that you've done. I mean, just as someone who has gone through it, I can't tell you how much it means. I'm still friends with some of the nurses that, helped me out and saw me through to this day, and now they have babies of their own, and we're all getting on with life. But without them, I don't know if I could have made it. They gave me the confidence and bravery I needed.
And people who have to be on long hospital bed rest, that really is a challenge. I mean, I think psychologically, I mean, one thing is your body just gets tired of laying around all the time, but psychologically, you know that you have to do this. I think people sometimes feel guilty for not wanting to, I mean, but they're not going to let their baby just come out and die. So it really is a challenge. And I could see how 5 weeks with most of the nurses being the same, probably there's a few that are new or subbing from a different floor or something, but you must have got to know people pretty well. I mean, that's longer than most summer camps.
Yeah, yeah, we were
You were
there for a
camping out
while.
for five,
Yeah,
5 weeks. Well, I'm glad you,
yeah.
and in the back of this book, I'll read it to you. It says, Lost on Hope Island, the amazing tale of the little goat midwives contains no goblins, dragons, magic, or villains. It's about two kids shipwrecked on a desert island, and it asks one question. If you were there, could you survive? Are you smart enough? Are you brave enough? Are you kind enough? And like I said, there really are some islands on the Pacific coast near Mexico that have all goats on them. That's all they have. So I guess I got that idea. I'm not sure how I came up with that idea, but so any other questions or anything you
What
think?
are you working on anything next? What can we look forward to? And also, how can people buy your books?
That's good. What I'm working on now would be the fifth in the Hope Rivers series. And the one that I'm kind of not moving along very fast. I thought it would usually it takes me about 2 years to write a book. Um, but like I said, I haven't been working that hard on it, but it is in 1969. Because remember, the book's about 5 years apart. And then there was one that was during the civil rights time. And then now there's this one. And this is interesting because I actually lived through those years, right? So you would think you wouldn't need to do that much research because it kind of surprised me that I had to look up everything like were birth controls available, pills available then? Did you have to have your mother's permission if you were a teenager or your parents' permission? I mean, there are a lot of things like that that have completely gone away. Um, and one of the things that I put in this book, because I was trying to think why my protagonist is very an innocent person. Um, she she's never really been on a date. She doesn't really have very many girlfriends. And I had to come up with some reason. Turns out her brother had polio. And you're a lot younger than I am, but that was a day where I actually had a kid in my fifth grade class, a boy who has had crutches and braces, like you see kids with cerebral palsy sometimes, and he was paralyzed, but he could come to regular school. But there were a lot of people in iron lungs, even
Mhm.
iron lungs at home. So I had to do a lot of research on things like that. I just thought there's so many things that you forget or that maybe you personally didn't. I mean, I personally knew this kid. I can't even remember his name now, but um, just even looking at the pictures and seeing how do the iron lungs, could people really do this in their homes? You know, um, because paralyzed is not just your limbs, but your lungs as well. And what the iron lung did was it would put air pressure on and it would come into your mouth and then it would suck it out and it would go into your lungs somehow. It could make you breathe. Um, so her brother actually, and after a while, he could learn to breathe. It was a learning activity, though. It wasn't like a spontaneous thing, like just breathe, right? He had to learn how to gulp the air and hold it in and then breathe it out. So that he could be out in a chair for a couple of hours. But even just researching things like what books were they reading? What were the TV shows that he might be allowed to watch? Gunsmoke or something, Then I have to look up, did they have Gunsmoke in 1970? Stuff like that. But it's pretty fun, really. So the book that I'm writing now is in the 70s, and that's the story. Not all.
I'm looking forward to it. Do you have a website?
Yes, and,
Okay.
and you just look up www. Patricia Harmon, Harman, at net, what is it? Uh, I just type it so fast. Anyway, just Google me and it'll
Okay.
come up. And I'm glad you brought that up, how to get the books. Um, Bookstores sometimes, especially local bookstores, will have them on shelves. You sometimes have to ask where they are. They're often with local authors, but they might not have them all. So you can either, if you know what you're looking for, you can ask them to order it. And I do like to support local stores. Or if you want to go to a bigger store, like just one of the big box bookstores, they can also order them and they might have more on shelf, but maybe not. Who knows? Um, and then finally, I wanted to say they are available in large print. If you happen to know, like your grandma or somebody has trouble reading, um, and people who, I guess they're probably mostly gone now, but when I first started going around doing readings and kind of thing, people who had actually been through the Great Depression would be there, and they would say, yeah, that's it. The coal mines shut down, then the rest of the town shut down. So it was always fun to have people like that who've lived through those times themselves. Um, so then they have audio as well. So then you would get that on Amazon, I think. You could probably get it a tape or a CD, but a lot of people just get that audio thing. And the libraries have them, and the libraries have the audio ones too. Well, you know that because you work in a library, right?
Right. So I am with AmeriCorps. I work with the West Virginia Community Development Hub, and the Smithers Skill Swap is a program that I developed in order to help residents showcase their skills. I mean, as you know, people in West Virginia, we are geographically very far apart, but we're very close knit, and in also our socioeconomic environment, we have had to learn how to fend for ourselves and help each other. So people have incredible skills, including you and our other authors that spoke today. And I think that it's important to give you and other people with talents, a platform in order to make people aware of that. So, we can help get your books out or help other people write books. I mean, you have given such incredible advice here today on how to get started, on how to contact, your agents, how to get in, published. I mean, you've covered it all. And I have to tell you, I am just so honored and I feel so blessed to be able to sit here with you and learn these things from you because your talent is immense. I mean, I can just tell from your short readings just how incredible and naturally you represent our area. And as a natural born West Virginian, I want to say thank you.
Thank you. I've lived here more of my life than I was when we came here as hippies, young hippies, and now I've been here. I'm almost a native. I thought of one thing when you were talking about publishing that I hadn't mentioned and I meant to, which is another option is self-publishing. Now, the bad thing about that is you have to watch YouTube videos. You go on Amazon, and they have a special website where they show you how to do it and that kind of thing. But for me, I'm not. I can use computers to type on and write books on, but I'm really not that savvy about a lot of apps and that kind of thing. So it was a real learning process. But for people who might have that skill, um, it's, maybe it would take you a couple of days, but it's really important to get an editor and pay someone. I mean, if you have a really good friend who's an English major with a PhD or something like that, maybe that would suffice. But a lot of people think that they've edited their own book. And I read each one of my books 5 times probably before I even send it out to an agent or a publisher. The kids' books I actually did self-publish, which would be interesting, wouldn't it? One thing I like is, I don't know if you can see it, the font is pretty big. It's not
Yes.
huge, but it's easy to read. I really like my own books too. It's,
Good, good.
I
I'm
just saw a
glad.
picture. I saw a picture of these stars in a pool of water, and I thought, what's that about? Then I remember they've got milk now. They found a spring, and they
Right.
found jars in the hippies' old stone cottage, and that's how they keep their milk fresh. But so I did the self-publishing with the last three. And the reason I chose to do that is my agent doesn't do children's literature. Her contacts are all with adult fiction or memoirs or nonfiction. So I just felt like I would wait forever. She doesn't know those people to find the right editors and that kind of thing. So that's why I did it. But I did at first I sent the book to different people who were like fans and they're like, I can't wait for your next book. Can I read it? Can I read it? Okay. So the trip was I would send you the book, email the book, because it hadn't been published yet, and you were supposed to proof, and I got a lot of small things back. I thought, well, that was pretty easy. But then after a while, I realized one of the women intended to be an editor or something like that, or a proofreader professionally. And I thought, well, I'll give her a shot. And I actually paid her, and she found a whole bunch more stuff. So occasionally I'll read one of my books and I'll go, oh my God, I spelled that wrong. But it's more work to republish the book for one word. And I read, books like Harper Collins was the one for all my fiction books and my historical fiction books. And they have, 2 or 3 layers of editors that go through line editing and story editing and all this kind of stuff. I still occasionally might find 1 or 2 things. So I didn't feel too bad about it. But anyway, the other bad thing besides it's a lot of work to self-publish your book, but it might not be as much work as finding an agent, is that to publicize your book, you will need to do all that yourself to promote your book. And I already, because of my other books, already had a following. So I felt like it, a lot of authors that have publishers also self-publishing some of their books. And some people say you can make more money at that, but my experience hasn't been that. Just so people know the financial aspects of being a new author is that if you get a good publisher, you will be given an advance. That's what they call it. and it might be as much as 25,000 or $50,000, which sounds like a lot, but you will get some of that as actual cash advance. I send you a check, but most of it you don't get until your books have paid it back. And naively, I was thinking, you know how they say in the back corner of your book sells for $19 or something like that. I was thinking $19, okay, that's almost 20. How long would that take to pay off $25,000? It turns out you don't get credit for the book. You get 50 cents a book. So that takes a really long time to pay off your advance. So you just spent two years writing a book and you get $25,000, and maybe someday you'll get more. And what a good break for me was internationally, and especially in the European countries and Scandinavian countries, midwives are a very common and a very popular thing. So they translated some of my books in the ones that sold to Australia and Ireland and Scotland and Britain. They were already in English, but it's been translated into about 10 languages.
That's
And so you
incredible.
get some credits for whenever those books sell, probably 50 cents. But when the foreign publisher buys it, you don't usually get another 25,000, but it could be 11,000. So that it kind of mounts up. It's not, I don't know that I could really I'd have to live in a different style. I'd be the starving artist probably if I lived on what I earned from books. But
Right.
so anything
Wow.
else?
Well, thank you so much. I have to say, I reached out to you, just cold called you, and you were so easy to work with and so friendly. And I am incredibly honored to have met you. I hope that we can continue, I don't know, this relationship or partnership, and maybe we can come and visit Smithers sometime and check out what we're doing here in the city.
We'll have to plan for it. The other thing is, I was going to tell people just now when you mentioned it, is if any of the listeners happen to have a book group, and I know they're quite popular, I'm in one here in Morgantown, but we could do this Zoom thing, or if say you happen to be, within an hour of Morgantown, I could actually come. I used to do it a lot, but like I said, with COVID and different things that have been going on, I'm not as active as I was. But when you reached out, I was like, okay, yeah, I can do that.
I'm so glad. Thank you. And I will definitely be letting everyone know. And yeah, I look forward to doing this again.
Okay, you take care.
Thank you. You too.
Bye.
Bye bye.